Hey guys, Laura Baker here, Everyday Horsemanship. If you find yourself tiptoeing through the minefield of uncertainty when working with your horse at liberty, uh, basically afraid that whatever you do is going to turn into a potential misstep, or you're fearing that you're going to make a mistake and and, and that you're going to mess up your horse, and that fear paralyzes you, stay right here and make sure you take notes. I'm about to show you a world where the boundaries are crystal clear and where every behavior the horse gives me is either desired or undesired behavior, or right or wrong behavior. Here, there's no room for shades of gray. Every cue, every response is starkly black or white. And when working with our horses at liberty, we develop our language where the horse understands the nuances of correctness and incorrectness with profound clarity. It's important to recognize that behavior as either correct or incorrect, or right or wrong. In order for animals to learn the behavior you're teaching, there needs to be expectations that are clearly and consistently communicated. So the criteria cannot be vague when you're working with horses, or really any other animal for that matter. For example, when I'm working with my horses at liberty and that behavior is black or white, there's always going to be some sort of consequence. Now, that sounds negative. What if they did something correct? And I'm saying there's going to be a consequence. Well, the consequence doesn't have to be negative. We as people think in terms of that consequences always mean something negative, and they're not. A consequence can be a positive consequence. There's something that is a result of the behavior that the horse gives us. So if the horse gives us desirable behavior, there's a consequence to that desirable behavior. And that's usually in the form of praise or a treat or something along those lines, because we're using positive reinforcement. If the horse gives us undesirable behavior, there's a consequence to that behavior. And that is in the form of some sort of correction or lack of positive reinforcement, because we're not going to give them a treat or a praise if they're giving us undesirable behavior. In fact, there's not even going to be a release of pressure in using negative reinforcement, right? Because if the horse isn't giving us the answer that we are looking for, then we're going to keep asking the same question. And so the pressure stays there until the horse gives us the result that we're looking for, and then we release the pressure. So there again is a consequence. There's a consequence to every behavior, whether it's desirable or undesirable. Again, criteria can't be vague, and you have to be consistent when you're working with your horse. And it's when that criteria of what is expected of your horse is changed. If it changes, that's when horses become confused, and you're essentially setting them up for failure, and they become frustrated. Think along the lines that if somebody were teaching you something and today they told you one way to do it, and tomorrow they asked you another way to do it, and the day after they asked you another way to do it, you would be quite confused and frustrated. Well, the same goes for horses and any other animal for that matter. Keeping the lines of communication consistent and the criteria that we expect out of their behaviors. So, for example, you're going to watch in just a few minutes a training video or bits and pieces of it with Magica and Dalton. And they're learning the freeze cue. And when I call one forward, the other one has to stay. And my expectation of that is that the one that I'm not calling forward is going to stay, and the one that I am calling forward is going to come forward. And there is going to be a consequence one way or another for any kind of behavior that is given. So if I ask Dalton to walk forward, to come forward and come here, and Dalton comes, Dalton will get a reward. If Magica stays in place, Magica will get a reward. But let's just say Dalton comes forward and Magica comes forward. My criteria is that Magica is supposed to stay and only Dalton come forward. So I have to give Magica a consequence, which is a correction to that behavior. And I ask her to back right back up. Now, if I ask them both to stay and I walk around them and Magica tries to step out of that, for example, and I use Magica as an example because this has been something that's been very difficult for her to stay put and to stay frozen. My expectation is that she stay put and not move a hoof. And if she does, there will either be a correction depending on how big she has moved herself, or there will be, I will ignore that behavior and she won't get the reward at the end, which is through the positive reinforcement and the treat or the praise. And to bridge cue that. So let's take a look at some training video here with Magica and Dalton and see where the concept of black and white behavior is applied. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'll talk us through it here a little bit. So right now they're just supposed to stay still. The Magica is a little crooked from her spot. So I called Dalton up, but not Magica. So I had to back Magica up a little bit and then reward Dalton. Now, this is the very early stages and they're both very crooked, but I can only work on one thing here at a time. And that's definitely something that I worked on correcting with them. And so they're looking a lot better now. But when I was first doing this, and never mind that they are very, very dirty. It's very wet outside, very muddy this day. And I asked her to get her hip over. She didn't. I asked her to straighten up. So I'm walking around her. What I don't want is for them to start to anticipate my movements and that as soon as I get up front, that they stop or that they start to follow me. I don't want them to follow me. So again, I have to correct. Magica really wants to come forward. And now I'm going to send Dalton away so that he can go back and get into his place. But here, my expectation was he would keep moving his feet. So I had to correct him. And again, it's black or white. If I would have let him get away with that behavior, he would continue to get away with it. And he would do that every single time. But if I correct it when it happens, just like he walked forward there, if I correct it when it happens, then I'm going to have a better chance that they're going to listen at any given point, especially when I'm giving a performance or in a competition. So it's just like children. We give an expectation and we ask them to meet that expectation. So that was good. Dalton came up and Magica stayed still. So that was really good. So I came back and I rewarded Magica for that. Now I was asking Magica to come forward there, I believe. I don't know. I don't have the volume on, so I don't know. But I had to correct Dalton because he was coming forward. So nice and straight here. I like that. Oh, Dalton started to anticipate and move forward. So I had to back him up. Again, what behavior is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So he's anticipating. So I'm having to get after him. And if I have to do that too much, I might send him out of the herd and around in my send away cue. So I'm trying to call Magica to me, and Dalton wants to come. So Magica, see how crooked she is? So I can only solve one problem at a time, right? Once I solve that problem, which is something I have worked on now, but once I solve that problem, from that point on, I expect that from the horse. But when they're learning something new, as they are here, I can only focus on one thing because otherwise there's going to be confusion. So I'm still breaking things down into smaller approximations. So here she comes in and that's unacceptable. So I have to send her back, send her away. She's got to find her spot in there. Like to have her a little closer. She is crooked here, but at this point in this stage, I allowed her to be crooked, but since then have worked on that. So again, walking around, trying to get rid of the anticipation. I want them to listen to my cues versus just doing it because it's something I'm doing over and over and over. I want them to be able to understand what I'm asking of them at any given point if I just randomly do it in the middle of a performance. So Magica had to come forward, and there again, see how she cut right over in front of Dalton. And that is her way of showing her dominance over Dalton. And she thinks I don't see that. So this was day one of working on this. On day two, when I went back to it, I started correcting that behavior and not allowing her to step in front of him when I called her forward by herself. So right now I'm just sending her around. I'm sending her away from the herd. And then I call her back in. And I ask her to get in her place. Her place will get closer and closer. So now they're like, well, we don't know. See, Dalton thought about going, but he didn't. They were a little unsure of which one I was talking to, but I'm using their names before I give them their recall cue. And they know their names, but they have a little bit of confusion. So I sent her back around, and she wants to come in on this side, and she wants to push Dalton out. But unfortunately, she did push Dalton out, so I'm going to have to go and put him, because he moved, I'm going to have to go put him back into his place. Well, he didn't listen to me again, so now I got to get after him. And I'm going to ask him, there, look at that. He side passed right over to her. That's good. So as you can see, black or white behavior. That's what I'm looking for when I'm working with horses. I want to make sure that they understand what my expectations are. So there's a couple of things I want to share with you as you go to work with your horse at Liberty. Number one, it's okay to not have a good day every day, especially if you're teaching your horse something new. I mean, once you introduce a new cue and a new behavior, it can take 3 to 5 days to master that behavior. And I'm not talking about 3 to 5 days over a month period of time. I'm talking about 3 to 5 days in a row. I mean, you can work on something for 15, 20 minutes, 3 to 5 days, and you're going to make some pretty good progress. If you work on it 3 to 5 days, twice a day, 15, 20 minutes, you're going to make a significant amount of progress, especially if you're running into some problem behavior. But once you introduce any new cue or new exercise or looking for any kind of new behavior, it can take 3 to 5 days to master that behavior. And sometimes, honestly, the first 2 days are just ugly. You feel like you want to give up because you just don't understand, why is the horse not picking up on it. And when you start working multiple horses, it can really bring that home quite quickly. Uh, but once you figure out the three main pillars with a horse of how to communicate, which includes the black or white expectations we're discussing, motivation, and connection, at this point, you can get liberty very quickly. You can go from doing no liberty, even struggling to catch your horse in the pasture, to liberty in a pretty short time, where we're introducing the steps to get there, and all of a sudden your horse is there, connected. It really can happen like that if you do it right and communicate consistently. Now, I mean, you might have moments or days where things don't always come together, and that's just how it goes. But for some of you, that may have been stagnant in your liberty training for a long time, maybe there's issues, maybe your horse is still running off on you. And if your horse is still running off on you, then there's something missing. There's something going on that you haven't recognized and don't know what it is. Now, I can probably help you through with this video and videos like it, but I have coaching and mentorship through my Liberty Experience program that would probably be useful and helpful for you in identifying what you're missing, because your first step is identifying the constraints you're having, meaning what is the problem? A lot of times, what we think the problem is isn't really the problem after all. It's a different problem. For example, some of you might have a problem with your horse running off, and you think the problem is draw, when your problem may actually be motivation. There may be something else, another horse, a gait, whatever it is that is competing for reinforcement for your horse. And we call those kinds of magnets competing reinforcers. Your problem is that your horse doesn't quite see being with you as the better option. You may have tried to solve the problem in other ways, such as adding pressure to the horse to run around. And while that can help, it doesn't completely solve the problem. And at the end of the day, you're still left with the same problem. Again, a lot of times it requires mentorship and outside eyes on the situation to identify the correct solution or solutions. And another thing that's really, really helpful is for you not to take it personal when your horse runs off. Horses are not people, and they act like horses. We're just modifying behaviors and teaching them the behaviors we do want and teaching them the behaviors we don't want. But so often people think that if their horses stay with them, they feel good. It's a reflection on themselves, on the way their horses feel about them. And so when the horses don't stay with these people, these people feel hard on themselves and they lose confidence. And if you're losing confidence, then you're taking it personal. And then you become afraid to do anything else because you might ruin, quote unquote, your horse. Your horse won't become ruined if you don't allow your horse to get away with the behaviors you don't want. Again, think black or white. But again, that's where coaching and mentorship can really help you get through that and build your confidence. Otherwise, it's so easy to suck yourself into becoming paralyzed and not doing anything at all with your horse, or making any progress when you could be having this wonderful relationship with your horse. That's why I say that sometimes it helps for people to work with someone that can tell them, yes, that's exactly what you need to be doing. I've definitely experienced this in my own Liberty training. Liberty is a journey, but regardless, every month that you keep doing what you're doing and don't solve the real problem with your horse, it's costing you time, frustration, and confidence. So assuming you have a motivation problem, but you spend the next 3 months doing one thing when it may have been simply something else, you really haven't solved the problem. And your horse is still running off and creating muscle memory through rehearsal of the wrong behavior. And trying to correct that is going to be even harder. So by trying to solve the problem without the correct answer can be one of the most costly errors in liberty training, since now basically you'll have to untrain the rehearsed behavior, and you still have to solve the problem, the original problem. So identifying the correct problem is the best thing you can do. So what I do to solve problems is I turn to others for help, whether through self-education, video, coaching, or more. And I gravitate towards multiple sources for each problem to make sure there is consensus in how to solve the problem. Because there's a lot of different ways to look at things. So if you haven't started liberty training, but always wanted to do it, and you've started liberty but are having problems still, those problems are either coming from one of three areas: communication, motivation, or connection. When you're in the situation, it can be hard to identify which of these three things it is. So what I'm going to do today is give you a special offer to help you identify which of the three areas your problem with liberty is, or if you're new to liberty, where the best place to start with your liberty training is, and it's probably not what you think. So I'm going to offer you a free 20-minute phone call to get you to the next level in your liberty and with your relationship with your horse, and assist you in identifying the problem that you're having with your horse. This call is going to give you the best path forward and let you know what to focus on right now. And it'll give you some insights and some action steps that you can take moving forward right now, this minute. But it's also to see if I have solutions, which I believe I would. I've been doing this for a while, but to see if I have solutions available for you to better help you break through those current problems with any additional coaching or mentorship. So reach out to me, send me a DM, and let me know that you'd like to have that free 20-minute phone call. In the meantime, enjoy your liberty. Take care. Until the next video. See you.